that's one of the major problems in this state. We have a system of legislators that underfunded our public schools, and then they decided to take money from those underfunded schools to create another school system of.
Please make sure you go watch this video in its entirety, because I am editing it because it is an hour long, because I don't want my video to be an hour long. I just wanted to really just get a little bit of what they say. And so that way, when you hear my responses, you won't be like, oh my gosh, she is like really doing them no justice. And I want you to actually hear the question and then my response to the question.
Charter schools and to allow students to leave public schools to go to private religious schools. And at the same time, our neediest students, it's really affecting our neediest students in this state. They're the ones that are having this money taken away from their districts. So I think it's wrong. I think there should be a separate, as Ms. Elba said, I think that these vouchers and charters should be directly funded by the state, and the money should not be taken from the charter.
Should not be taken from the public schools. That I agree with. Homeschool, home education, charter schools, online education, they all need to be funded separately. Period. The voucher program needs to be funded separately. The budget needs to accommodate all students. If there is a student in the district, you should get XYZ amount of money. I say $2,000 per student. Period. Public schools get the same amount of money. Charter schools get, well, I think charter schools should get the same. Yeah, charter schools are just private public schools. And then private schools, the parents usually are able to afford XYZ. So maybe they should get $1,000. And then homeschoolers, I would be happy with accepting just $1,000 or $1,500, or maybe it should be a sliding scale based upon the parents' income, because there are more affluent home educators and there are less affluent home educators. And if we really want everybody to be on the same playing field and be able to get the same access to education, then we need to make sure that everybody has the same access to supplies. Now, in that regard, I also think that there is an issue with the curriculum itself. But for a public school situation, I don't know how much we can get into correcting the curriculum. Common Core is a disaster. They address later on that the teachers teach to the test. I'll try and get that comment in there. But there's a lot wrong that needs to be fixed.
Schools, from the district. But the major problem is that the number of students who are getting the vouchers have never attended public schools. And so the problem is out of control. Thank you.
And Mr. Neal.
Coming from a district where we're a cap district, Brooklyn City Schools has always lacked proper funding. We're always on the levy. Out of the 611 schools, there's 611 districts, 2006 cap districts, and we are one of those districts. So it is a tough thing to do to rely on the property taxes. We just passed the levy 2 years ago that got us new money to get us over the top. So as far as charter schools, and I don't think there's a way that we got to figure out a way to do this. There's a better way to figure out how we can fund schools. That's all I can tell you right now is we need some help with that. And as far as the charter schools and the vouchers, I'm willing to listen. Let's put it that way. I'm willing to listen to some. I think we need to get some smart people and throw everybody into the pot and start talking about this stuff, figure out the best way to do this.
All right, thank you very much. My cat has dropped in. The State Board of Education is responsible for monitoring and reporting to the public about the status of public education, primarily through the use of testing. How satisfied are you with Ohio's current testing program and its uses? Starting with
the testing program is crap. It seriously is crap. This is where I think they discuss how the testing program is at a disadvantage because they're teaching children to the test, and the tests have a tendency to change. So while you're teaching to the test, you are putting the students at a disadvantage. One, because the students in the lower income areas are not getting the same in more affluent areas. Their understanding is not the same, i.e., liberal education as opposed to the classical one.
Ms. Johnson.
Thank you for the question. The reason I started off giving that little history lesson about the Durolf case is because even though the students, the quality of their education is determined by their zip code, which is wrong, all the students are evaluated on the same test. And that makes it even worse, mainly because our testing now measures wealth instead of intelligence because of how our schools are funded. So I do not believe that our testing system is appropriate. First of all, I don't think that students should just be evaluated through a test. There are other ways to evaluate students. And when you use the same test to evaluate students in an inequitable state like Ohio, then you do not get a true measure of the quality of the schools or the district or what the students are doing. So I do not believe that our testing system is what it should be.
He's just sitting there eating all his food.
Cool. One of you can stay here and one of you can go. I'm recording
We
this
do need to
and I'm
do
going to
some work
post
on
it.
that. I think the report card is changed by every governor, every change of administration sometimes. So I believe that it does need some more consistency, and it does need some more common sense, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree that they need more common sense.
Thank you. Ms. Elba.
No, I don't think the state testing is fair. I think that there needs to be a way and a standard to hold our students accountable to ensure that they are ready to graduate. I think that unfortunately, because the test has changed so often, you find most school districts actually teaching the test and not teaching the grade, which becomes
That's what I was talking about. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
problematic and a struggle for the staff as well as for the parents as well as for the students, because once that's over, then what has the child learned or the student learned? So I think there needs to be a better way. I think we need to add more people that has a say in it. We need to be looking.
Yeah, you actually need homeschool educators because when we have our assessment, we can have our assessor look at a body of work cobbled together from the year, samples from the beginning to the end of our school year, showing their work and how it has progressed from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And of course, you get it every year, so they see, if you have the same assessor, they see how the work has changed from year to year. I wish that the parent could be able to assess their children's work because sometimes you don't always get the same assessor, which makes it difficult. I've had a wonderful assessor who moved, and you have to be a licensed teacher in the state of Ohio in order to sign off on a homeschool assessment. So I think that needs to be discussed as well.
That if we're going to add teachers from all aspects, from urban as well as suburban school districts, to make sure that everyone is adequately trained on how to test and making sure that it's all students and not just a certain class of students.
Thank you. So if not testing, then what information should the State Board of Education collect, analyze, and report so that the policymakers and residents of Ohio can evaluate if schools that receive public funds are serving the students in the communities?
What type of information?
Yeah, they messed this up. They had no idea what alternative there was to testing. Not a single candidate could actually come up with what I told you about how home educators can evaluate their students. They evaluate their work. If you're in a public school system, you get homework. Do you get A's and B's on your homework? What is your understanding within the classroom? Get a written evaluation from the teacher of the student, from their body of work, from the year. Get an evaluation from the parent. Hopefully, the parent is actually paying attention to what the child is doing and helping them with their homework during the course of the year, where they can actually make a valid assessment of their child's work from the beginning of the school year to the end of the school year. Testing is not the only way to evaluate a person. I'm still trying to figure out what in the world happened to oral assessments. You can have an oral assessment of a student. You can record it on a video or on audio, asking the child general questions from all subjects, basic understanding of certain things that they need to know before they move on to the next grade. You already have Common Core, which says that they're supposed to meet milestones. But here's the thing, meeting milestones is objective. The student is unique. I didn't learn how to read until I was in the 5th grade. No, let me correct that. I didn't learn how to comprehend what I was reading until the 5th grade. Obviously, I could read, but I could not comprehend what I was reading. It was just words on a page. Yes, I know what the words say. Reading the sentence, okay, means absolutely nothing. They're just words on a page. They have no inherent understanding to me. I don't know what it means. I don't know what I'm supposed to get from it. They're just words. I wasn't stupid. I was in the honors class. I cared more about science and math than I cared about language and reading. Period. So, if you can have a conversation with a child and get to an understanding that they are learning, that they are progressing, and then you give them positive feedback to mitigate any type of negative bullying that they might be encountering because they're not doing what everybody else is doing, but they could be a genius in science, a genius in music, a genius in the arts. You are stifling children. And for these candidates to not even understand that simple understanding where you can assess a child beyond a piece of paper and random questions is sad.
Yeah. What would
Here, let me just let you listen to this retardation.
validate what would show the validity of the schools, the effectiveness of the schools, other than testing?
I'm not sure where you could go with that, validate, without testing.
Taker. I think that if we're going to look at things, we need to look at the student overall. We need to look at their academics, how they're performing throughout the year. We need to look at other things other than just one particular tool of testing, because testing is not just about a student. I mean, you have students that are in college that don't test well. It doesn't mean that they're not college material. It just means that they need the more extra help. So I think if we are going to hold everyone accountable, I think that the test should just not be the major tool to determine graduation.
Thank you. And Ms. Johnson?
That was the most intelligent answer that I've heard. But she didn't go into how to do the assessment, which is why I was going off. But she's close, and I understand that they have a minute. So I'll take a step back. I'll walk it back, and I'll say, okay, one candidate actually said that you need to do something besides the test.
Called The Testing Charade by Daniel Koretz. He said something, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me. He said something like, testing isn't the problem. It depends on how you're using the test. And in Ohio, not good decisions have not been made on how you use the test, as far as state takeovers and a report card that is not a valid instrument to measure. So there are other ways to measure progress besides tests. You could use capstone projects. You could look at the child's ability to problem solve. You can do group work. You can do all kinds of other ways to evaluate how schools are doing besides just testing. We don't need to rely on the test to be able to evaluate or measure how well a district or a school is doing. There are other ways to evaluate the quality of what's going on in the state.
Thank you. Next question to Ms. Alba. And also I'm getting questions from the audience. So trying to take care of both here. The state board recently reiterated their commitment to equity in a resolution that identified equity as thoughtful teaching of future citizens that racism, bigotry, and hatred have no place. Please comment on your understanding of equity in our public schools and be done to address it. Ms. Alba.
So I think that when we create policies, we need to make sure that they are being followed up and followed through. Too many times, policies are created and they look good on paper, but sometimes they fall through the cracks. And as far as the equity is concerned, we need to make sure that all school districts, no matter where you are at in Ohio, that you are receiving the same tools, the same resources, the same education. Just because you live in a certain area, you should not get more or less, because those kids are still kids. They're still kids. They're still going to need the same quality education to be successful, to be self-sufficient once they leave school to go out into the real world.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
I believe that Ms. Elba was talking about equality, and I want to talk about equity. Equity is we provide what a child needs. Everybody shouldn't get the same because everyone's needs are not the same. Some have more challenges than others. So equity work is about compensating for those challenges. We have to draw on those who have more privilege to help those who have less privilege. I was one of the developers of the our resolution at the state board level. I'm very proud of it. And so I want to say that when you talk about equity, it's making sure that you provide resources for those who are the neediest. And that's what should be going on in the state. And right now, that's not happening.
Mr. Neal.
I believe the equity should be equal as well too. There are kids out there that again need help. I came from the special event, so from every aspect, that's what needs to be done is to be equitable, financial education for all the kids.
Should the state school board increase its influence on school policy? And if so, how can they do that?
Well, when you say we should increase our influence, we can't increase it by ourselves because the final word is usually in the legislature. So the state's
members only have so much power. Officials only have so much power. It has to be handed down to the legislator.
And that's where we are holding our voters accountable. We make sure that if there's going to be policies that are going to be put in place for our students, then just like we would hold anyone else, so then we need to make sure that we go to the polls, that we hold our legislators accountable to make sure that.
And that's where it goes down to the intelligent citizenry. I would have never known about this if I were not a part of a Facebook group of diligent and like hard-nosed homeschooling parents. We want to make sure that our freedoms are not removed to educate our children at home. We know that the school system is only 200 years old. We went from the Sarah Ingalls Wilder one-room schoolhouse to these camps of indoctrination. Everybody's supposed to learn the same thing. Yes, I believe that to a certain degree. We all need to know the same national history, but we cannot all know the same state history. Math is universal. Science is universal. We should all be learning the same science. We should all be learning how to ask the right questions, all the questions, all the time. We should all be learning to be critical thinkers. We should not be chastising conservative views in light of liberal views, because quite frankly, the most conservative people that I know are the most critical of thinkers.
Our students all are educated and not just sit on it. You know, you can only do so much as a board member. Board members, you can speak for yourself. You just can't speak for the whole entire team. Collectively, if you get together, there needs to be some type of action that go to move forward.
The State Board of Education recently passed a resolution stating that the local school leaders and health officials are in the best position to plan how to deliver education during the pandemic. What role, if any, should the State Board play in guaranteeing that education is safe and adequate during this time?
And so we need to find a better way to continue to educate as well as keep our students and teachers safe. Because it's not just our students, it's our teachers, it's our administrators that we all need to keep safe during this time.
Solve some of those problems.
Follow the parents, talk to the parents.
Ms. Elba. Reading and arithmetic continue to be a problem. Would it not be wiser to have these subjects thoroughly taught and then add more complex learning once the students can read and understand?
Yes. 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 That's what should have been done. That's what a classical education does. The classical education sets the foundation, gives the student a body of information with which they can pull upon. They're supposed to get a thorough understanding of history, the facts of which we all need to understand. They need to get a thorough understanding of character development and moral understanding. Philosophy can be understood by a 5-year-old. You can teach a 5-year-old right and wrong through historical events. History is written by the winner. You need to tell the loser's story. I personally homeschool my children with an underlying current of psychology, sociology, economics, and politics. I have been doing so since they were 5 years old. I emphasize the concept of if you don't know your past, you are doomed to repeat it. Period. I'm going to fast forward this video. To me, my solution for this problem was to teach reading phonetically. So I teach my children with phonics. Once they know what they're reading, we focus on the history. Math is just obvious. You do number recognition, letter recognition, and you add, subtract, and then you go on in the natural succession for math. But in reading, once you learn how to read, you focus on history. You go upon a historical fact, a character trait, and then you assess the morals and ethics thereof. I'm going to put together a masterclass on how to do that, because I think that a large majority of children would benefit from this. I understand that there are special needs children, and I understand that there are children that are kinesthetic and all this other stuff. But once we get a base foundation, then we can adapt it and manipulate it to get everyone learning the same thing in the way that they need to learn it. Oh, I forgot. Art history and music history could be beneficial to the kinesthetic and physical learners who need to have more auditory stimulation and physical movement. Dancing and playing an instrument and listening to music and drawing and spatial recognition for the more special I don't mean like special needs, but I mean like honor students, those like myself who benefited from heavy art and music appreciation studies, allowing me to think outside the box, and so on and so forth.
I believe you have to have a foundation, and I think it starts.
The honor student, that's what I was getting at. Not the special needs students, but the honor
Houston, we
student.
have a problem.
No mail? Office wasn't open? Not 2 o'clock yet. Might have wanted to actually look at a clock. You look like you're getting pink eye. You might want to wash your hands and wipe your eye with a little bit of alcohol.
Where's Tony?
In the bedroom or in the cat room.
Okay.
I wish I had eye drops, but I stopped buying them.
It's not your cream soda.
I know it's not my cream soda, Nathan, but
Where's my first
the lights
can?
on in the kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
You're the one that turned on all the lights. Pick the brush off the floor. So at 2 o'clock, are you going to go back up there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Ow.
And then you're going to tell her to go home, and then you're going to finish cleaning up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
Ow.
Why you pull it off, Tinky? Why you pull the tab off, Tinky?
No.
His back at the White
Stop!
House. That thing that guys do in the movie.
No, look at me. Look at me, Tinky. Look at me, Tinky. No, 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 no.
That's the best, like it's a puppy.
No, you took the tab off.
Hold on to something, but also needs to reassure himself that it's there just in case. And that's why this.
Oh my God! Now I done lost the video. Stop! What the hell?
And I think it starts with the reading and the writing and the arithmetic. I know that there are kids, and I've used this term already this evening, common sense, some basic stuff. Reading.
The challenges for me to remember what I just asked. What are the specific powers and duties of the state board? Why does the State Board of Education matter?
Well, it creates the policies that drive the rest of the districts. Like Mrs. Johnson said, the standardized stuff that comes to the table needs to be broken down. So that's really what it does. It creates.
Direct the superintendent to advocate for the education. They have a committee that creates a budget and a timeline that is forwarded on to the state board and the General Assembly for recommendations for passing the policies. All the policies that are looked at in the beginning, they're actually a direction for our local school boards. So no one board member can do it alone. You need all 19, just like on the local board, you need all 5 or all 7.
Spoken, I will say more. but we do set policy. I think it's also very important to know that we do license appeals when someone has allegedly done something that they shouldn't have done. We're the last stop. It comes to us, and we read a lot of material and make a decision on if we agree with what the hearing officer has recommended or if we want to take a different direction. We also hire and or fire the state superintendent. So I consider that also to be a very important role. The state superintendent we have right now, I think, is excellent. I'm glad we have him. But that's also another important job that the State Board of Education has.
Mr. Neal first. What tools do we need in order to evaluate the performance of schools?